Good friend Clay Henry is on the line right now. Editor and publisher of Hogs Illustrated. One of the best guests we've ever had. Clay, what's new in your world today? How are you?
I'm good. How are the cats?
Cat's doing great. I'm keeping her away from you, by the way. You're not allowed to ever see her.
I got it.
I can only imagine the grin that was just on Clay's face when he laughed like that.
Oh boy, yeah.
I know some things about you and cats, Clay. You're not allowed to come over.
Oh, you've been told. You've been told, right?
I have been told. That's exactly right. No reason to get into that.
I was just following orders.
That's right.
That's doing what Mama told. We won't go any deeper. You want to talk football? I hope not cats. That's my fault.
That's exactly right. We want to talk football, but first I want to thank you on the air about. We've got Tom Pagnozzi coming on at 1:00 today, and we're going to talk some Lou Brock with Pags. Obviously, he would have come into contact with him many times.
That'll be a treat.
That will be a lot of fun. But I want to ask you any remembrances you've got of watching Lou Brock play as a lifelong baseball fan. This was this was a truly special player.
Yeah, I grew up listening to Harry Carey. I mean, you heard these stories. I think Lou Brock is. We had back before air conditioning. I grew up at 18th and Fair Park in Little Rock. Mm-hmm. We had a 2-story house, attic fan. Me and my 3 brothers all had beds upstairs. I had the top bunk in a bunk bed with my younger brother. Well, in the summertime, that's the hottest place in the house, the upper bunk upstairs. There was a window, and for me to go to bed before 10 o'clock, the trade-off was I got my dad's radio, and we would tune it to KMOX, and I'd go up there and listen to Harry Carey. And I lived and died with the Cardinals, and then, you got to see Saturday afternoon game of the week with Dizzy Dean, Pee Wee Reese. You got to see the Cardinals occasionally, and when the first time I saw Lou Brock play live on TV, I thought there was something wrong with the TV. I was like, I'd never seen anybody move that fast. His first step to second base when he turned to steal second was just wonderful. And I asked my dad, I said, why don't they get everybody that's a base stealer? Of course, you want some power. But yeah, I thought he was a wonderful player, and I think the most exciting play in baseball is the triple. And I think he hit 141 triples in his career, and that's a lot.
That really is a lot.
But he was fun to watch. Got to go to St. Louis a couple of times, and I just couldn't take my eyes off of and the way he played left field.
I was reading about how he was like the first player to really study opposing pitchers' pickoff moves, and he would film them with an 8mm, and it pissed off Don Drysdale to where Drysdale told him to put that thing down and then threw at him the next at-bat.
Threw at him. Oh, yeah. Drysdale, of course, Gibson would nail a couple of Dodgers. I mean, that didn't take long to get that settled out. And when Gibson, he did not throw at hitters. He hit them. There's a difference. You didn't get out of the way of his pitch. There was no way. I mean, he'd drill you right on the hip, or if he just wanted to make you mad, he'd throw it right underneath your chin, and then take about 4 steps towards home plate.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into football here. Like your piece about Scott Fountain, and it hits everybody when there's actually a special teams coach here for Arkansas. And if it's about details, if it's about if this is one of the most important aspects of the game, it's shocking to think that you hadn't had a special teams coach the last couple of years. It's interesting, too. You want to know about the effect of poor special teams play? Ask Austin Peay. They didn't have their 3 long snappers. That pretty much cost them their season opener against UCA.
Yeah, it sure did. Some guys that are regulars at practice, and I mean that would see all the practice, tell me that he looks like an old offensive line coach. Intense, is all get out. And, of course, that's what he is. He played offensive line in college for Terry Bowden at Samford, and then he coached offensive line for a number of years before kind of moving into just special teams the last 5 or 6 years and deciding that's what he wanted to hang his hat on. Enjoyed listening to him, and Phil, when they started back in July, those early practices, he had the special teams 6 and 7 players deep. I was like, wow. And he says, well, he wanted to give the entire team a foundation because you don't know what's going to happen injury-wise or COVID quarantine-wise. And he wanted everybody to have 2 positions and it to be 6 or 7 players deep. And right now, they're practicing 4 players deep on special teams. And that's detail. And I think it'll pay off this year at some point.
Do you get the same sense that they're doing the same thing with the offensive line? I know Sam has talked about trying to find the best 9, 10, 11 offensive linemen and is moving them around a little bit during practice to see where they fit in. But also I think there's got to be an aspect of, hey, Luke Jones might be our starting left guard one week, but something might happen, as far as COVID's concerned, we might need him to be at center or right guard the next week. Do you think that's why?
Yeah, I think at center, you definitely have to have about 5 guys cross-trained that can take a snap and get it back to the quarterback. And it's just kind of, you went through the long snapper thing, having centers is somebody's got to start the play. And it's so important. And I think that, Stromberg is the guy, but, whether it be injury or whether it be quarantine, COVID, they're going to have a number of guys cross-trained. I wouldn't be surprised that if, there's certain positions that where, say, a cornerback also knows wide receiver. They get into a situation where, are you just going to elevate a walk-on? Well, probably not. The speed becomes a liability at certain positions. And they may have some wide receivers that are cross-trained that know a little bit of cornerback play just because of the speed. And most of those guys in high school, they played both ways. They play cornerback, wide receiver. So, what I'm seeing is this team is coming together. There's a little more talent. I asked somebody that's seen practice to kind of give me a top 8, and I came up with the top 8, and we matched. So I think that's probably pretty close to being the top 8 players. And I would say you got Coates, Dorian Gerald, Julius Coates, defensive ends. Then I think you flip over to offense, and you definitely have Rakeem Boyd, Traylon Smith, Felipe Franks. Let's see. I would say Jalen Catalon, and then I might say Trey Knox. I'm sorry, Traylon Burks. Those guys. Did I give you 8?
I think that was 8.
Yeah,
I'd say that. I didn't really count.
Those are 8 guys that I think could play on most SEC rosters right now, could be in the 2 deep. And I don't think I could give you 8 guys last year that could make a 2 deep at Mississippi State or Ole Miss from the Arkansas roster. That's how far the talent was down. So I think the talent is improved. It's got a long ways to go, but I think they're headed the right direction. And I think what I see on the commitment list, there's more guys that are going to fit on that list.
Speaking to Clay Henry here on Halftime, Clay, when you look at the defensive side of the ball, I think the one player, and you brought up Julian Coates, I think, though, the one player that I'm excited to see, just to see what he can bring to this team, is Xavier Kelly. And I don't think you can really put an emphasis, or you can't put enough emphasis on, while he may not have played a whole lot at Clemson, he's been there, he's done that, and he's done it at a championship level. What do you think Xavier Kelly's going to bring to the defensive side of the ball?
I think he's going to be a guy that can hold a gap and not cave in. He's a guy that has strength. He's got tree trunks for arms. I mean, they're massive arms. He's got strength. He's got a little speed. He's got size. So I I don't know that he's an elite pass rusher. I think he's a lot like Jonathan Marshall. He's a very strong dude. And you have to have anchor points where you put pressure on offensive guards. You knock them back. You do not get knocked back into your linebackers. And I think he can play a leverage point and not get caved in by one guy. If you're going to cave him in, you're going to have to do it with the double team. Well, that's fine. That frees up your linebackers. Arkansas's defensive line did not require double teams the last several years, which means you've got a man on a linebacker. I saw linemen and H-backs get to linebackers every game last year. Every team on Arkansas's schedule, because not even the non-conference games were their defensive tackles requiring double teams. And that really puts pressure on your linebackers.
I want to circle back to baseball just for a second before we let you go, just because I'm one of the younger generation, and I've really grown to appreciate Razorback baseball, especially listening to Phil for all these years and now getting to work with him. But when you look at a guy like Tom Pagnozzi, who we've got coming up here at 1:00 here on halftime, where is Tom at, like, all time amongst Razorback baseball greats? Is he up? I'm assuming he's up at the top of the list.
Yeah, well, he's unique in that he played only 1 year at Arkansas. He was a junior college transfer. He played third base in junior college, and Norm DeBryan saw him. And now you guys know that Norm was a catcher. He is the rarest of rare catchers. He was a left-handed catcher. I don't know how many people know that, but he always had a knack for taking guys that played other positions and convincing them that they might not make it to the big leagues as a third baseman or first baseman, but they might as a catcher. And he converted Pags to catcher, played 1 year at Arkansas, and then was drafted and just skyrocketed. Tom was a guy, didn't hit for a lot of power, but he would take the fastball away to the opposite field. He hit so many singles to right field. Now, you can ask him. I mean, he'd go down that line for doubles in into the gap in right center, but he wore out the right side of the field and really frustrated pitchers that, go away, and boom, he'd take it that way. He could hit, and he was more than adequate as a catcher. But as far as, can you say he's one of the all-time great Razorbacks with 1 year? Probably not. But he was a great professional in Major League Baseball with the Cardinals.
Clay, great stuff, man. Appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Talk
Clay.
next week.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy it always.
You got it. Think about that. Pagnozzi, a junior college third baseman. Norm converts him to catcher, wins 3 Gold Gloves in the National League as a catcher. You think Norm DeBryan knows his stuff? Yes, sir. You know who else knows their stuff? It's the Fenceman. Call them at 479-782-3936 if you own a business that needs more security or more curb appeal, because a new fence from the Fenceman can do both of those things. They've been doing it for over 40 years. Just call them up. They'll be there. Quick, no obligations quote, 479-782-3936. That's the Fenceman, a division of Quantum Property Services. And we will be back to wrap up the first hour of halftime with news you need to know, presented by the one and only SmackDown. Stay tuned.